The premise of the movie is set during the time of the Great Depression. It is a time when people die to get a job and make money. The societal condition is not ideal, but lucky for the protagonist Paul. He is a guard in the state prison of Louisiana. The prison consists of death row cells, referred to as the Green Mile. Paul is in charge of the criminals who are sentenced to death. For the past year, he has been having trouble at work because of a bladder infection. He has to frequently take medicines to reduce pain and can hardly pee because of it. His fellow guards are all kind people, except for a pretentious man named Percy. He was appointed to the force because of his father's connections and shows his incompetence every chance he gets. He treats the inmates like animals and shows no respect for his seniors. One afternoon, Percy brings in a criminal named John Coffey and makes a show out of the guy, calling him a dead man. His colleagues sigh, annoyed by his obnoxious personality. The criminal, John, is giant compared to the guards, but is quiet and submissive. Paul is amazed that a muscular man like him is worried the lights will go off at night because he is scared of the dark. Before he leaves, John puts his hand forward and shakes Paul's hand, something that no other criminal has ever done. The guard is so intrigued that he does some digging and finds out why John was sent to jail. Last month, 2 girls were kidnapped from their backyard. When the father found out, he and the people from the village organized a search party. John was found crying hysterically while holding the dead bodies of the little girls. He was accused of assaulting the girls and killing them, and since there was no evidence to prove otherwise, he was convicted. Later, Paul is outside when he meets the prison warden, Hal Moores. Hal reveals that Percy has applied for an administrator job at a mental hospital, which would mean better pay and better hours. The news is exciting for Paul because he and his coworkers are tired of cleaning up after Percy's mess. The warden also mentions that his wife, Melinda, is not doing good. She suffers from a lethal brain tumor, which has put her on her deathbed. Hal is constantly worried for her, and he feels helpless that he cannot save her. At night, Paul talks to his wife and tells her about John. He also apologizes that he can no longer make love because of the excruciating pain caused by the bladder infection. His wife wants him to go see the doctor, but Paul is almost ashamed to have gotten the disease. The following day, one of the guards named Brutus sees a mouse in the cell block. They try to catch it, but it runs into a padded storeroom. Afraid that it will eat away the floor, they clean up the entire room to look for it. But strangely enough, the mouse is missing. A few hours later, Percy spots the mouse and goes into a fury trying to kill it. The mouse goes back into the storeroom, making Percy clean the room as the others did earlier. The guards don't tell him they already tried that, and watch him lose his mind over the missing mouse. Paul berates him for making a fuss out of nothing, which results in Percy being disrespectful to him and his friends. He threatens to use his connections to fire all of them from their jobs. Paul retaliates that if he ever makes such a threat again, they will teach him a lesson, even at the cost of their jobs. In the following scene, Paul and the others are preparing the electric chair for an upcoming execution. The most important part of the execution is putting a wet sponge on the convict's head before the cap is attached. If the sponge is removed, the person will struggle before his death, but if it remains, the electric current will go straight through the head and the execution will go smoothly. Later at night, Brutus leads the criminal's execution. Paul knows that Percy was waiting to witness an execution before transferring to another job. When confronted about this, Percy reveals that he doesn't just want to witness one, but is looking to be in charge of an inmate's execution. In the following scene, one of the inmates named Dell finds the mouse again and names it Mr. Jingles. He is amazed by the animal's intelligence because it can fetch a spool of thread as a trick. The guards allow Dell to keep Mr. Jingles as a pet, since it does them no harm. Then, we see Paul meet Warden Hal again. This time, the warden is worried about a new inmate being admitted to the prison today. His name is Wild Bill, a sociopath who killed 3 people in a holdup. He is aggressive and evil, so the guards will have to be extra careful while handling him. Unfortunately for Paul, that day, the bladder infection makes him suffer so much that he can hardly pay attention to his surroundings. 2 guards bring the murderer, Bill, to the prison. He pretends to be in a trance and then makes an attack on them. They try their best to restrain him, but the man hits Paul in the groin, multiplying the pain he was already enduring. Similarly, another guard is nearly strangled, and the only one who can stop him is Percy. He is right behind the murderer with a full view of him, but he freezes in terror and can do nothing. Finally, Brutus comes in and takes the murderer out. When the others bring him to the cell, Paul is left behind and collapses in pain. John sees this and asks him to come closer because of an emergency. Even in great pain, Paul goes to him, only to be grabbed. John puts his hand on his crotch and does something that causes the pain to disappear in an instant. I've heard of this trick somewhere. Upon letting go, the inmate is weak because the pain Paul was enduring has transferred to him. Seconds later, a cloud of gnat-like spores fly out of his mouth, and he goes back to normal. A shocked Paul asks him what happened, to which John only says that he helped. In reality, he sucked the disease out of Paul and suffered himself, but then the disease flew out of his body as spores. After the process, John is exhausted. He goes to sleep while Paul goes to pee. To his surprise, he feels no pain at all. At night, he returns home and makes love to his wife. Because of the incident, Paul has grown more interested in John and his story. He goes to John's public defender to inquire more about the man. According to Paul, such a childlike, innocent man must not have committed the crimes, but the defender thinks otherwise. Paul also finds out that no one knows where John came from, because the first time he was seen was with the girls' dead bodies. The next day, Paul gives John a loaf of cornbread, thanking him for his help. John shares the gift with Dell and Mr. Jingles, while Bill throws racist remarks at him. For the next few days, he causes a lot of trouble, spitting at people, urinating wherever he likes, and disrespecting the guards. Having had enough of his insults, the guards wrap him up in a straitjacket and lock him in the padded room. In the meantime, the day of Dell's execution is nearing. He is not afraid of dying, but is worried that Mr. Jingles will be killed after his death. Brutus promises to send the rodent to a place called Mouseville in Florida, where he can work in the theater. Later that day, Bill is put back into his cell, but he doesn't wait before causing more trouble. He grabs Percy and touches him inappropriately. Percy is soon let free, but he wets himself in the process. Everyone decides to never speak of the humiliation again, but Percy hears Dell snickering. Hence, when he comes across Mr. Jingles that day, he stomps on him and kills him. Dell is heartbroken and feels like his child was killed. The guards cannot do anything about it, but John asks Paul to bring Mr. Jingles closer. He blows into his palms and resurrects the animal from the dead. Everyone is shocked, and Dell couldn't be more grateful. The execution day finally comes, and Percy is put in charge of it. Paul hopes that after killing Dell, he will finally transfer to another job. Dell is placed on the chair in front of the audience, and Percy starts the execution. He hooks Dell up to the electrodes and purposely does not soak the sponge, which is then placed on Dell's head. This causes the poor man to struggle and scream in pain. Simultaneously, John also cries as he channels Dell's struggles into his own body. In the end, Dell lights on fire, and his life finally ends. Afterward, Percy claims that he didn't know that the sponge needed to be wet. A furious Brutus punches him at the obvious lie. He has to be held back to ensure he doesn't kill the man. As a result of the incident, Percy is forced to take an immediate transfer to his new job at the mental institution. Surely he'll be nicer to people there. Paul then goes to John and finds out that he tried his best to use his powers to help Dell. However, even after suffering so much pain, he wasn't able to save him. Moreover, the pain was also felt by Mr. Jingles, who has since run away. In the following scene, Paul and the other guards are having a meal together. He has just been to the warden's house and seen the trouble he is going through. His wife Melinda is losing her memory and becoming violent as a result of the tumor, but the man can do nothing about it. Hence, the guards decide to bring John to the warden's house to help Melinda, but they have to do it in secret since they can be punished for letting a murderer out of prison. The next day, they put the plan into action and knock Bill out using a drugged glass of beer. They also gag Percy, put him in the straitjacket, and lock him inside the padded room so he won't tell the authorities. When John is told about the plan, he is excited that he gets to help someone before his death. It further makes the guards realize how good of a man he is. However, on their way out, Ben, who is still conscious, grabs John's arm. For some reason, John is terrified of the man, but is let go when he finally falls asleep. Outside, John jumps in excitement to be able to see the sky and the ground. Upon arriving at the house, they are caught by the warden and Paul has to explain what they want to do. Although the warden doesn't believe that a murderer like John possesses any power, he allows them to meet his wife. John gets very close to Melinda's face and sucks something out of her mouth. As a result, the house starts to shake and the lights shine intensely. Seconds later, he falls down and starts coughing, and simultaneously, Melinda sits up. She is healthy and has no memory of anything that has happened since the diagnosis. This time, John is unable to free the spores, so the disease is confined within him. Suddenly, Melinda stands up and recognizes him. She says that she met him in the dark and that he gave her his light. She doesn't understand what happened, but knows that John saved her life somehow. Before leaving, he is given a necklace as a thank you present. That will surely make him feel better about being executed. Back in prison, Percy is let free from the padded room. As he leaves, John grabs him through the bars and releases the spores directly into his mouth. The disease transfers to Percy and makes him hallucinate as it did to Melinda. He walks in front of Bill's cell and empties his revolver into his chest. When the other guards catch Percy, he releases spores from his mouth. Upon being asked why he did this, John sticks out his hand and Paul takes it. This makes him see that Bill was the one who abducted the little girls, who John was accused of killing. John knew there was no way of redemption for the killer, which is why he killed him. Later, the police arrive to investigate the death. Percy is questioned but appears to be in a catatonic state. He is declared unfit to be on duty and is sent to a mental hospital, ironically the same place he was supposed to transfer to. Meanwhile, the day of John's execution nears. Now that Paul knows he is innocent, he doesn't know what he should do. His wife senses his dilemma and suggests he talk to John to see what he wants. In the following scene, John reveals that he doesn't want to live anymore. He can feel the pain of all the others around him, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. He does not want to feel the pain anymore, and is tired of hearing everyone's thoughts about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. So executing him would be the greatest act of mercy done upon him. As a last request, John says he wants to watch a movie. On the day of the execution, John is taken to the auditorium in front of the audience. They berate him, calling him a murderer and a molester. However, the guards' reaction is the opposite, as they watch him get strapped in tears. Paul goes to put a cloth over his face, but John says that he is afraid of the dark. In the end, the poor man is electrocuted and killed. The scene changes to several years later. Paul has grown old and lives in an old age home consisting of many retirees. No one is allowed to go outside since they are prone to get lost, but Paul takes long morning walks every day. He goes to a secluded cabin in the woods and watches someone inside. One afternoon, the retirees are watching an old movie on the TV. It is the same one that John watched as his last wish. It brings back memories to Paul, overwhelming him with emotions. He walks aside and tells the story to a fellow retiree, Elaine. He and the other guards were transferred to a youth corrections facility after John's death, unable to watch any more executions. Later that day, Paul brings her on a walk to a cabin in the woods. They see a mouse living inside the cabin, which turns out to be Mr. Jingles. When the animal felt the pain at Dale's execution, it gained some of John's power and has been living ever since. Similarly, Paul is also 108 years old and in good health. This is because a fraction of John's power was transferred to him when they held hands to find out the truth about the murders. Paul has watched all his loved ones die and feels like this is his punishment for killing a man like John. In the last scene, Paul is seen at Elaine's funeral. He has yet again outlived a loved one. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.